Hi everybody and welcome back and thanks for tuning in. So I'm going to tie a few split wings for you today. So this is a really versatile pattern. Tie it anywhere from a 14s down to a 22s. So it's perfect for anything from like your large dark olives down to your blue winged olives. Use a couple of different colour CDC. So this is a natural. I also do it with a real light dun as well. So it just helps me in those tricky light conditions pick the fly out better. So I'll tie one of the light ones for you today. So a must have for your box, really versatile, so let's jump straight into it. So in the vise I've got a size 16 fully milled ultimate dry, and I'm going to come in with some of the fully milled pro twisted in 70 denier. So I'm going to start a little bit behind the eye, so probably an eye and a bit's length. I'm going to wrap that in with 3 or 4 turns. Cut my butt section away. So the next thing we're going to do is get some coq de Leon. So this is a medium pardo. So I'm going to get probably 5 or 6 fibres. I'm just going to pull them 90 degrees from the stem. So I line all those tips up. And then I want probably about a shank's length or a hook's length. So I'm going to tie those right on top. I'm going to check that length. No, I don't mind slightly long tail, to be honest. I think it helps with the buoyancy. But I'm going to tie those on right on top of the shank. I'm going to counter spin my thread to flatten it. So I'll get a nice smooth body when I come to put that quill on. And then as I come to the last turn, I'm going to clockwise spin my thread up to cord it up. I'm going to pull that underneath and pull the thread towards the eye, and that'll flay or flare that tail for me. And then I turn over the top just to lock it off. So now cut away a butt section. And then I've got golden olive, strip quill. So this is ones that I've hand stripped myself. And that I've dyed myself. So I'm going to apply some wax. I'm going to tie this in, and I'm almost tying this in on the bottom, really, because I don't want it to slip when I get that first turn in. So I'm going to make sure it's almost on the bottom for that first turn. And then flatten my thread, and then I can tie all that quill down. That's not playing ball for me. There we go, got it now. Right, so I'm going to create a slight taper, only very slight. And then I'm going to take some fully milled super glue, and I'm going to apply a bit of this. Now, you can add UV resin to the top of this, but I prefer my quills just with super glue on my dries. I think the UV adds extra weight. So I'm going to take my hackle pliers, and I'm going to carefully do touching turns all the way up to a tying point that we started with. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to lock that off. So you need to leave a bit of space here. You don't want to crowd that eye. And cut that away. Like so. Right. So the next thing I'm going to do is come in with some floss. So this is the fluorescent safety red in 110 for fully milk. So I'm going to take a piece of that and I'm going to pull that under my thread and onto the top of the shank. I'm going to set that right on top. I'm going to do one turn and then I'm going to pull the piece sticking forward backwards, and I do a couple of turns on top of that, and that'll just double that sighter for me. So that's going to act as a sighter. So then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some pine squirrel and I'm going to create a little dubbing noodle, because what we need to do is we need to almost create like a ball of dubbing, and this will help prop that wing up when we tie it in. So you need, you might think you're doing too much of this, but you need a good sized ball to help prop that CDC up, or it'll just collapse over the back of the shank. So, but again, you need to make sure you leave in enough room to tie this CDC wing off. So that's my ball done, like so. I'm going to get some more fly tying wax. I'm going to put a healthy amount of that on, because I don't want this CDT to slip. So then what I'm going to do is, and this all depends how good your CDC is, but I've got 3 good feathers here, and this is like the light done CDC. So I'm going to stack those, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to nip that stem out the middle, making sure I get all 3 of them, like so. And what that's going to do is that's going to create a V. So I'm going to pinch those now in my other hand. I'm going to sweep all them forward, and I'm going to sit that on top of the dubbing ball that we've made, and I'm going to cord my thread up with some clockwise turns, and then I'm going to do a pinch wrap to lock that in, and then 1, 2, 3 tight turns, and you'll see that CDC is slightly sticking up. Now if you didn't do that dubbing ball properly, it would all just collapse to the back. So I'm going to cut this out like so. Right, and then I'm going to neaten this head up a little bit and lock in all those other fibres, making sure it's nice and tight. Excuse me. Right, so I've got a couple of stray pieces there, so I'm going to nip those out. Right, so I'm going to put more wax on here. Again, making sure I've got a healthy amount on. So now I'm going to try and split this wing as even as I can down the middle, making sure I've got equal amounts either side. I'm going to pull that forward, and you can see that'll actually pull the wing up further for you. So I'm going to turn over there, and then I'm going to pull my floss back. What I'm actually going to do on this one, I'm going to put another turn in just in front, like so. And then I'm going to sweep that back, and I'm going to do a couple of turns on top. I'm going to add even more wax now. I don't really use varnish on my dries, I just wax the thread. So I'm going to do a double whip finish. If you were tying these in smaller sizes, you would probably only get away with a single whip finish if you're using a 70 denier thread. And then I'm going to do another whip finish, and I'm going to do that on top of that sighter post, like so. Make sure that's all nice and tight. Then I'm going to cut my butt section away. I'm going to pull my floss up, and I'm going to cut that to the length that I want my sighter, and that'll keep that wing apart for me as well. So now You know, you can trim this with your finger, but I'm going to pinch this. I'm going to take a lighter and I'm going to just burn those tips down to the required length. My lighter isn't great. And I'm just going to keep checking these. They're a bit long, those. So I'm going to burn a little bit more off. And I'm going to use my finger almost to create the shape of the wing. It'll mould around my finger. Like so. So I'm happy with that length. So that's the CDC split wing. As you can see there, that floss just keeps that wing open. It's a deadly pattern. You know, use this in Bosnia in size 22s, and if I'm honest, probably 90% of my fish come off that fly. And I use it over here in the bigger sizes for the blue wings and for the large dark hatches that we get. You know, you could tie it in bigger sizes. You know, you could probably do a 12 if you wanted to use it as a, you know, as a brook dun or a March brown, something like that. So definitely one you want to get in your box. So thanks everyone for tuning in. I'll see you on the next video.